Hello, hello. Hello. Hello, hello.
Just in case the rabbi needs a spatula.
I don't think so.
Right. That was there from the skit last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they moved things last night.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. That's what I figured. I
Maybe also a little later. Actually, never mind. I'll take care of it.
I need to still leave this on, sitting in the office.
You may want to ask the municipal people if they need to do something.
Oh, yes.
Do you know why this is happening? Yes. Oh, I didn't realize that.
Some of last night's kiddish wine.
Oh, Joe's not here.
Oh, I do. Yeah, that's right. You want to do from there or from here? Okay. Boker Tov, everyone. Good morning. Like old times at CBI, we're 5 minutes late, so here we go. Joe Tenenbaum is going to lead us in some highlights from Suke de Zimra. Boker Tov.
Okay. Page 65, please rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan las chakvivin avin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shesani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shesani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shesani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokal haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asali kol tzarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadik gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, anoten v'ya'ef koach. Baruch She'amar is found on page 83. Baruch She'amar v'haya ha'olam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Oseh Bereishis, Baruch Omer v'Yoseh, Baruch Ozer M'kayim, Baruch Malaim el haaretz, Baruch Malaim el habriot, Baruch Mashalem Sakatov l'Re'av, Baruch Hai La'ad B'kayim l'Netzach, Baruch Padeh Mitzil B'Shemo, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hayal Ha'av Harachaman, Amalo B'fi Amo, Yachid Chei Olamim, Melech Meshubach, Perdei Ad Shemo Hagadol, Baruch atah Adonai Melech Molo B'Tishbachot. Ashrei is found on page 96. Wait, no, before that, Hodul Adonai Kitov is on page 92. Please rise. Hodul Adonai Kitov, Kilel Nakasto, Hodul Adonai Kilel. Shilanu Zichelanu Kilelam Hasto, Viavrakenu Mitzarenu Kilelam Hasto, Noten Lechen Lechabasar Kilelam Hasto, Udulel Shamayim Kilelam Hasto. Now Ashrei is found on page 96. Ashrei Yoshvei Vetecha, Odialu Chasela, Ashrei Ha'am Shekachalo, Ashrei Ha'am Shadonoi Elohav, Tila LeDavid, Amen. There must be a call. I wrote some. Dilara no yudaber pi v'rech kabasar shem kachol le'olam va'ed V'nachnu nivrech mi'atav yad olam. Hallelujah. Page 104. Nishmat kohai tiberek shemcha Adonai Eloheinu v'ruach habasar tiferet ramim zechrakam alkeinu tamid. Yid melach miyish belach miyarech lach Ha'el hagadol hagibor v'nara el elyon konei shemayim va'aretz Nolel chon shebechecha v'v'rech et shem kadshecha ka'amur l'David Orchi nafshi et Adonai v'kol karavai et shem kadsho Ha'el b'ta'at samodu zecha, ha'gadol bichvod shemecha, ha'gibor l'netzach ben harav and oratecha, ha'melech al yoshev al kisei ram ben Isa.
We're going to welcome Alex Marcus, who's going to lead us in Shacharit. Alex Marcus is going to lead us in Shacharit, and we begin with Shochein Ad, bottom of 105.
Shochein Ad Marom V'kadosh Shema V'chatuv rananu tzadikim b'Adonai la'yesharim nevat tehila b'fi yesharim titalal Udivrei tzadikim titbarach, uvilshon chasidim titromam, uvkerev kedoshim titgadash, uvmachalot revivot, amcha beit Yisrael. Shechein chovat kol hayetzurim lefanecha, L'nai Eloheinu v'lhei avoteinu, L'hadot, l'halel, l'shabeach, l'faer, l'romeim, l'chader, l'varech, l'ela, u'kales, al kol divrei shirot v'tishbachot, David ben Ishai, avdecha meshichecha, yishtabach shimcha, la'ad malkeinu, ha'el. Brachot v'hadot me'atav yad olam baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol batishbachot el ha'odaot adon haniflaot habocher b'shirei zimra melech el chei ha'olamim yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah Yamad divra kirutei v'amlich malchutei b'chayechon u'yomachon u'v'chayedech ol beit Yisrael b'galav izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'me'omaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekadasha brichu le'la micho berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran v'yama v'imru Amen. Baruch et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or v'rei choshech oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. Hakol yaducha v'yakol yishabechucha. Ein kerkecha Adonai Eloheinu be'olam hazeh v'ein zlatcha malkeinu l'chayei ha'olam haba efes biltakago aleinu limot hamashiach ve'ein domeh lecha moshienu litchiyat hameti el adon al kol hamasim baruch umvorach befi kol neshama gadlo v'tuvo male olam datu dvuna sovevi moto hamit gael hayot hakodesh v'nedar bechavod al hamerkava zechu tu mishor lifnei kiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei kevodo Tovim meorot shebara Eloheinu yitzaram b'da'at b'vina uv'haskel koach ugvura natan bachem niyod moshlim b'kerev tevel meleim zifum fikim noga no ezman hol haolam Smechim beteitim betzasim bevoam nosim be'em haritzon konam pe'er v'chavod notnim lishmo tzala v'rina lezecher malchuto kara lashemesh vayizrach or ra'a v'hitkin surat halevana Shevach notnim lo kol tzeva maro tiferet ugedula srafim v'yofanim v'hayot hakodesh leil asher shavat mikol hamasim Surenu malkeinu v'goalenu b'rei kedashim. Kulam ahuvim, kulam biburim, kulam giborim, v'kulam osim be'ma v'ira ritzon kona'am, v'kulam pochim et pichem b'ktushav tara, v'shira, u'v'zimra, u'mivarchim, u'mshavchim, Umfarim, umaritzim, umakdishim, umamlechim, et Shem ha'el ha'melech, hagadol v'hagibor v'hanora, kadosh hu, v'chulam mekablim alehem ol malchut shamayim zeh mizeh, v'notnim rashut zeh lazeh, lehakdish, liyotram, b'nachat ruach, v'safa b'rav nima kedosha, kulam kechadonim v'omrim, Be'ira, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Milo Kol Haaretz Kevodo, V'ofanim, V'ayot HaKodesh, B'rash Gadol, Minasim Luman Serafim, Leumatam, Neshavchim V'omrim, Baruch Kevod Adonai, Tomo, Lael Baruch Nimot Yiteinu. Or Chadash Al Tzion Ta'ir, 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 V'nizke kulanu mehera leoro, V'nizke kulanu mehera leoro, Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMe'orot, Avar Rabav Tanonah. Hospital, hold divrei Talmud to attack the Ahava. V'havienu l'shalom me'abar kanfot ha'aretz, v'tochenu kamiyot li'artzenu, ki el poel Yeshua tata, uvanu v'archata mikol ha'am v'lashon, v'karavtanu shimcha agadol sela be'emet, l'hadot l'chal l'chedcha b'yahava, baruch ata Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael b'yahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavcha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha, ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shiftecha b'veitecha, u'leftecha b'derech, u'shoftecha u'vkumecha, u'kshartam liot al yadecha, v'hayu totafod b'neinecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha, v'haya. Vayomer Adonai Moshe Lemor, Daber el b'nei Yisrael, v'amarta aleihem, v'asu lachem tzitzit, al kanfei b'ydehem l'dorotam, v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf b'til techeles, v'haya lachem l'tzitzit, uritem oto, Uzkartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, vayositem otam, uru acharei levavchem, v'acharei enechem, asher aten zonim achreihem, liman tizkaru, v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'item kedoshim lelohechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem. Adonai Elohechem emet. Emet is even a complication. Lidor vador hu kayam ushmo kayam v'chiso nachom malchuto v'emuto liad kayam at. Rav Chaim v'kayamim. Emet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu Elohei avotenu malkeinu melech avotenu go'olenu go'el avotenu yotzreinu tzur yeshuatenu hodenu matzalenu me'olam shmecha ein Elohim zulatecha. Ezrat avotenu atahu me'olam.
We're in the middle of page 114. After Michamocha, the Amidah will begin on page 115.
Tehilot le'eloyon baruchu u'mevorach Moshe u'vnei Yisrael lechanu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam michamocha b'elim Adonai michamocha nedabar kodesh nora tehilot osei felet Shira chadasha shivihu geuli l'shimcha al safat hayam yachad chulam hodu ve'im Imlechu v'yameru Adonai imloch leolam va'ed Sur Yisrael Kuma bezrat Yisrael Uvdei Kinumecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai tzivot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. Stay up. Holy, here's Suri, McKimmon.
Alex is going to lead us in the repetition on 156b.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Anora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chastei Avot U'Mavi Goel Livnei B'Nehem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayeh Metim HaTorah V'Lechoshia Mechachel Chayim B'Chesed Mechayeh Metim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofech Olim U'Matir Asurim U'Mekayem Emunato L'Shenei Afar Michamocha B'Agavrot U'Mi Domelach Melech Memit U'Mchayeh U'Matzbiach Yeshua V'Ne'eman Atah L'Chayot Metim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayeh HaMetim. Nikadesh Shemcha Ba'olam Kashem Shemakdishim Oto B'Shmei Marom Kakatu Vayad Neviecha V'Kara Zeh El Zeh V'Amar Kadosh 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 Anai Tzavod Melo Kol Haaretz Kivodo Az B'Chol Rash Gadol Adir V'Chazak Mashmim Kol Minasim Luman Serafim Lumatam Baruch Yomeru Baruch Kivod Adonai Mim Komo Mim Komcha Malkeinu Tofia V'Timloch Aleinu Ki Mechakim Anachnu Lach Matai Timloch B'Tzion B'Karav B'Yameinu Le'olam Va'ed Tishkon, Tikadal V'Tkedash B'Tok Yerushalayim Ircha, L'Dor V'Ador, L'Netzach Netzachim, V'Einenu Tirena, Malchutecha, Kadavar Hamor, B'Shirei Uzecha, Al Yadei David, Mashiach Sidchecha, Imloch Adonai Leolam, Elohai Etzion, L'Dor V'Ador, Hallelujah. L'Dor V'Ador Nagid Godlecha, U'Lenetzach Netzachim Kiddushatcha Nagdish, V'Shivcha Eloheinu Mipinu Lo Yamush Leolam Va'ed, Ki El Melech Gadol V'Kadosh Ata, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Yismach Moshe b'matnat Helko, Ki Aved Neman Karat Halo, Kelil Tiferet Berusho Natata, Ve'amud Lefanecha Al Har Sinai, U'shnei Luchot Avanim Hored Biyado, V'katuv Bachem Shmirat Shabbat, V'chen Katuv B'Toratecha, V'shamru B'nei Yisrael Et HaShabbat, La'asot Et HaShabbat, L'Doratam Berit Olam, Beini Uvein B'nei Yisrael, Od Hi Le'olam, Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz u'vayom hashvi shavat vayinafash v'lo natatu Adonai Eloheinu legoyei haratzot v'lo chinchato malkeinu lo avdei pesilim v'gam b'nuchato lo yishkenu aralim ki l'Yisrael amcha natato b'ahava l'zera Yaakov asher bam b'charta Am Mekadeshei Shvi, Kulam Yisbu V'Yitkangu Mituvecha, V'Hashvi Ratzita Bo, V'Kidashto, Chemdat Yamim Otokrata, Zecher L'Maaseh V'Reishit. Eloheinu V'Elohei Avotenu, Ratzeh B'Mnuchatenu, Kadshenu B'Mitzvotecha, V'Ten Helkenu B'Toratecha, Sabenu Mituvecha, V'Samchenu B'Shuatecha, V'Taher Libenu, Le'avdecha be'emet, v'chanchilenu, Adonai Eloheinu, b'ahava uvratzon, Shabbat kodshecha, v'anuchu v'Yisrael, mikadshei shemecha, Baruch atah Adonai, mikadesh haShabbat. Ritzedon Eloheinu b'amcha Yisrael uvit filatam v'yashev et avodah lidvir beitecha ufilatam b'ava tikabel b'ratzon u'tehi l'ratzon tamid avodah Yisrael amecha v'techazen aneinu b'shivcha l'tzion b'rachamim Baruch atah Adonai hamachazir shechinato l'tzion modim anachnu lach. Shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu le'olam va'ed. Sur chayenu magen yishenu atahu l'dor v'ador. Nodeh l'cha u'nisaper tilatecha. Al chayenu hami misurim biyadecha. V'al nishmotenu ha'pikadut lach. V'al nisecha. Shebachol yom imanu. V'al niflotecha. V'tovtecha. Shebachol et erev Boker v'hasorayim, hatov kilo chalu rachamecha, v'cham rachem kilo tamu chasadecha, me'olam kevinu la. V'al kulam yitbarak v'yidramam shimcha malkeinu tamid le'olam va'ed. V'chol chaim yodu chasela, v'yahalelu et shimcha be'emet, ha'el yeshuatenu v'ezratenu sela, baruch atah Adonai. Hatov shimcha l'cha na'el lehodo. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu, barchenu barcha hamshuleshet b'Torah hakituva al yedei Moshe avdecha, amara mipi Aaron uvanav, kohanim am kiddushecha ka'amur. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yechunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Sim, shalom. Sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael amecha. Barchenu avinu glanu ki echad bior panecha. Sim shalom. Sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Kiva or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torat Chaim V'ahavat Chesed Utztaka uvracha v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom. Sim shalom. Sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam. Sim shalom tova uvracha. V'tov beinecha levarech et amecha Yisrael b'chol eit u'b'chol sha'a b'shlomecha. Sim shalom. Sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Baruch atah Adonai hamivarech et emo Yisrael b'shalom. Yikedav v'yikedash shemei rabbah v'yamad yivrak kirtei v'yomlich machutei v'chayachon v'yomachon v'chayedecho be'Yisrael b'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Ishmei rabbah mevorach le'olam le'omei omaya yidbarach yishtabach v'yipar v'yitamam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei l'kedusha Leila min chol berchata v'shirata, tish berchata v'nechamata, damiran v'yama v'imiru, titgabel s'chotchon avodchon, d'chol Yisrael kadam avuhon, divishmaya v'imru, amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael v'imiru, oseh shalom b'marav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael v'imiru,
Yasher koach, Alex. All right. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Yes. One more. Enthusiasm. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Okay. We are going to welcome Hank Kaplowitz, who's going to lead us in the Torah service. Hank, welcome. And the Torah service itself can be found on what page are we on? On page 139. We also want to welcome everybody who's joining us on YouTube Live, everybody who's with us on Zoom, and everyone here in the sanctuary. Welcome, Shabbat Shalom, 139, and also our honorees, Tomer and Andy. You can come on up to the bima.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, v'ein k'masecha, malchutcha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor, Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch, li'olam voed, Adonai oz li'amaho yitein, Adonai yivorech, et amo v'shalom avorachamim heitiva v'irtzoncha et zio tivnei chomot Yerushalayim כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך אלרם ונישא, אדון עולמים. ויהי בנשוא אהרון, ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני, ויפוצו אויביך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך, כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, לעמו ישראל. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shema.
You may be seated. And Yeshakach to Tomer, and to Andy and to Hank for leading the Torah service. So this morning's Torah reading, Parshat Korach, can be found on page 860. And just a very brief introduction before we call up our first Aliyah. And the introduction is this. perhaps the reason why the rebellion of Korach is found here at this point, in this moment, in the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, is because of what happened in last week's parsha. Last week, the children of Israel's dreams were dashed. They received very unwelcome news, which is that all of the adults who made it out of Egypt, who witnessed the miracles, who saw the wonders of God, and who would journey in the wilderness would themselves not make it into the land of Israel. No adult who left Egypt makes it into the land, except for two, actually, Joshua and Caleb. So there's a connection, a sort of emotional connection between dreams dashed in last week's parsha and an act of rebellion in this week's parsha. And perhaps we can think about our own lives and times when we have felt disappointment, times when goals have not been met, times when we have tried something or attempted something and perhaps not achieved it and have then been disappointed. And maybe we've channeled that disappointment and harnessed it and used it in wonderful, productive ways to then get back up and pursue things at an even greater extent or with greater passion. And the lesson, what we find in this morning's parsha, is that as a result of the disappointment, here is Korach and some people that he represents who choose rebellion. And what we'll discover are the consequences of that. But even with the rebellion, what we understand is that there's still a significant amount of heartbreak on the part of the Israelites, having just learned that they will not be entering the land of Israel themselves, but rather that their children will be. So the parsha begins on page 860, and I'm going to turn it over to Joe Tenenbaum, our Gabbai this morning.
ויעזור ויגל ויושיע לכל חוסים בו ונאמר אמן. הכל הלא גודל אלוהינו ונו כבוד לתורה. כל בת כהן קרבי תעמוד. מכל חיה וחיים הכהן. ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. We call Nicole Richter for the first Aliyah.
Amen. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahat ben Levi v'datan v'adiram b'nei Eliyav v'yom ben Pelet b'nei Ruvain vayakumu lifnei Moshe v'anishim ibnei Yisrael chamishim u'matayim nisiei Eda Korach v'oed anshe Shem vayikahalu al Moshe v'Aharon v'yomru aleihem rav lachem ki kol ha'eda Kulam Kedoshim Tocham Adonai Madua Titnasu Alkohal Adonai Vayishma Moshe Vayapol Al Panav Vayadaber El Korach V'El Kol Adato Le'mor Boker Vayadua Adonai Et Asher Lo V'et HaKodesh V'yikriv Elav V'et Asher Yivchar Bo Yakriv Elav Zot Asu Kechu Lachem Machtot Korach V'Chol Adato Utnu vahem ish vishumu alehem ketoret lifnei Adonai machar v'haya ha'ish asher yivchar Adonai hu hakodesh rav lachem b'nei Levi vayomer Moshe el Korach shemu na b'nei Levi hamad mikem ki hivdil elav Yisrael etchem me'adat Yisrael likriv etchem elecha elav ve'mor Lavod et avodat mishkan Adonai v'lama'ed lipnei haidat l'shartam vayikrav etcha v'et kol ahecha b'nei Levi etcha u'shartem gam kahuna Lachem achat v'chol adacha hanoadim al Adonai v'haromahu ki talinu alav. Vayishlach Moshe b'kriv l'datam v'aviram b'nei Eliyav v'yomru la na'aleh hama'at ki talinu me'eretz zavat chalav udvash v'hamot Lamitanu bamidbar ki hishtara alav gam hishtarar. By the way, I just want to say, 49 years ago, I read that aliyah at my bar mitzvah, wearing the same talis and the same kippah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan לנו Torah. Emet v'chei olam nata b'tocheinu baruch atah Adonai natan haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach to David Talger for reading the first Aliyah. We now call for the second Aliyah, Corey Biller. Ya'amod, Shir ben Conan Halevi. And our reading continues on page 862, verse 14.
No, I'm looking for it.
Hasn't moved for 3,000 years.
Here we go. Yeah, we got it here. Yeah, right here.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hambarach.
Kana Barak Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Av lo el oretz zavat chalav udvash haviotanu vatiten lonu nachala sedeh v'chorem ha'anei hanashim hahen tinakelo na'aleh vayikar lemoshe ma'od vayomer el Adonai el tefen al minchatam lo chamur echad mehem nasati v'lo hareoti et achad mehem vayomer Moshe el Korach ata v'chol adatecha hayu lifnei Adonai ata v'ahem va'aron machar vayi'u'u'uchu ish maktato untatatem alehem ketorech v'hikravtem lifnei Adonai ish maktato chamishim u'matayim maktot va'ata va'aharon ish maktato vayiku ish maktato vayitenu alehem ish vayisimu alehem ketoret vayamdu petako hilmaod umoshe va'aharon vayachel alehem korach et kol ha'edah el petako hel moed vayira kavod Adonai el kol ha'edah.
Baruch Hu et Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yasher Koach to Howard Kessler for reading the second Aliyah. And we now call Jamie Benaroff for the third Aliyah. We're on page 863, verse 20. Ya'amod Yaakov Yitzhak ben Shalom Shachnem Shalishi.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
וידבר אדוני אל משה ואל אהרון לאמור, היבדלו מתוך העדה הזאת, ואכלה אותם כרגע, ויפלו על פניהם ויאמרו, אלוהי הרוחות לכל בשר, האיש אחד יחטא, ועל כל העדה תקצוף. וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל העדה לאמור, העלו מסביב למשכן קורח דתן ואבירם, ויקם משה, וילך דתן ואבירם, וילכו אחריו זקני ישראל. וידבר אל העדה לאמור, סורו נא מעל אוהלי האנשים הרשעים האלה, ואל תיגעו בכל אשר להם, הן תספו בכל חטאותם. ויעלו מהמשכן קורח דתן ואבירם מסביב, ודתן ואבירם יצאו ניצבים פתח אוהליהם, בנשיהם ובניהם וטפם. ויאמר משה, בזאת עדון כי אדוני שלחני לעשות את כל המעשים האלה, כי לא מליבי. אם כמות כל אדם ימותון אלה, ופקודת כל האדם יפקד עליהם, לא היא אדוני שלחני. ואם בריאה יברא אדוני, ופצת אדמה את פיה, ובלע אותם ואת כל אשר להם, וידעו חיים שעולה. וידעתם כי ניצצו האנשים האלה את אדוני, ויהי כחלתו לדבר את כל הדברים האלה, ותבקע האדמה אשר תחתיהם, ותפתח הארץ את פיה, והבלע אותם ואת בתיהם, ואת כל האדם אשר לקורח, ואת כל הרכוש. וירדו הם וכל אשר להם חיים שעולה, ותכעס עליהם הארץ, ויעבדו מתוך הקהל. וכל ישראל אשר צבאותיהם נשאו לכולם, כי אמרו, הן תבלענו הארץ, ואש יצא מאת אדוני, ותאכל את 50 איש מקריבי הקטורת. וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, אמור אל אלעזר בן אהרון הכהן, וירם את מפתות מבין השרפה, ואת העץ זרע הלאה, כי קדשו את מפתות החטאים האלה בנפשותם, ועשו אותם רקעי פחים ציפוי למזבח, כי הקריבום לפני אדוני ויקדשו, והיו להיות לבני ישראל. ויקח אלעזר הכהן את מפתות הנחושך אשר הקריבו השרופים, וירקם ציפוי למזבח, זיכרון לפני אדוני ישראל, למען אשר לא יקרב איש זר, אשר לא מזרע אהרון הוא להקטיר קטורת לפני אדוני, לא יהיה כקורח וכעדתו, כאשר דיבר אדוני ביד משה לו. וילהנו כל הדת בני ישראל ממחרת, על משה ועל אהרון לאמור, אתם המיתם את עם אדוני, ויהי בהיקהל העדה על משה ועל אהרון, ויפנו אל אוהל מועד, והנה כיסאו הענן, וירא כבוד אדוני, ויבוא משה ואהרון אל פני אוהל מועד.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emes v'chayei olam natan b'voteinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach to Eli Jacobs for reading the third Aliyah. We now call Steve Finkler for the fourth Aliyah. which is found on page 867, verse 9. Ya'amod Shalom Tzvi ben Yosef Zerol Ravi'i.
Amen. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe le'mor, Heromu mitoch ha'ida hazot v'achaleh otam keraga vayiplu al pneihem, vayomer Moshe el Aharon, kach et hamachta, v'ten aleha esh me'al hamizbeach v'sim ketoret, v'holech mehera el ha'ida kfar al v'chaper alehem, ki yatsa ketzef milifnei Adonai hechel hanagef, vayikach Aharon ka'asher diber Moshe, vayarotz el toch hakahal, v'hinei hechel hanegef ba'am, vayitein et hakatoret v'yachaper al ha'am, vayamod ben hametim uvein hachayim, v'te'atzar hamagefa, Vayiyu hametim b'magefa arba'a asar elef ushva me'ot milvad hametim al davar korach, vayashov Aharon el Moshe el petach ohel moed v'hamagefa netzara.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natan lanu Torah d'emes, shechayei olam natan b'sereinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koch to Henry Bloom for reading that Aliyah. For the fifth Aliyah, we call Dan Kamen. Ya'amod Naphtali Hertz ben Yaakov Tzvi v'Matol Kamishi. The fifth Aliyah can be found on page 868, verse 16.
Baruch Adonai hamarach.
Baruch Adonai hamarach ba'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamarach le'olam ba'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher b'chanu mikol ha'olam, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe le'mor, daber el bnei Yisrael. Vayikach meitam matei leveitav meit konesiyehem leveit avotam 12 matot, ish et shmo tiktov al mateu, ואת שם אהרון תכתוב על מטה לוי, כי מטה אחד לראש בית אבותם. והנחתם בו אל מועד לפני העדות אשר איבד לכם שמה. והיה האיש אשר אבחר בו מטהו יפרח, והשיקותי מעלי את תלונות בני ישראל אשר הם לנים עליכם. וידבר משה אל בני ישראל ויתנו אליו כל נשיאיהם מטה לנשיא אחד לבית אבותם 12 מטות ומטה אהרון בתוך מטותם. וינח משה את המטות לפני אדוני באוהל העדות באוהל העדת עדות, ויהי ממחרת. ויבוא משה אל אוהל העדות, והנה פרח מטה אהרון לבית לוי, ויוצא פרח ויוצא ציץ ויגמל שקדים. ויוצא משה את כל המטות מלפני אדוני אל כל בני ישראל, ויראו ויקחו איש מטהו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam notah b'tochenu. Baruch Ata Adonai, Noten HaTorah.
Amen. So Yasher Koch to Jonathan Engel for reading the last Aliyah. And now, for the next Aliyah, we're calling Raz Engel. And this Aliyah can be found on page 869, verse 25. Ta'amod, Rina Shoshana, Bat Avraham Basara, Shishi.
Baruch et Adonai HaBorach.
Baruch Adonai Barach
Baruch Adonai HaBorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. V'yomer Adonai el Moshe, Hashev et mateh Aharon lifnei ha'edud lemishmeret le'ot lifnei Meri utchal teludatam. Me'alai v'lo yamutu vayas Moshe kasher tziva Adonai oto kenasa. Vayomru b'nei Yisrael Moshe lemor hein gavanu avadnu kulanu avadnu kol hakarev al mishkan Adonai yamut ha'im tomnu lagoa. Vayomer Adonai el Haron ata uvanecha uveit avicha itach tas tisu et avon hamikdash viata uvanecha itach tisu et avon kunatchem v'gam et achecha mate levi shivat avicha hakarev itach vayilvu alecha v'yishartucha v'ata ubanecha itach lifnei ohel ha'idud v'shamru mishmartecha u'mishmeret kol ha'ohel ach el klei hakodesh v'el hamizbeach lo yakrivu v'lo yamutu gam hein gam atem v'nilvu alecha v'shamru et mishmeret ohel moed lechol avodat ha'ohel v'zar lo yikarev alechem ushmartem et mishmeret hakodesh v'et mishmeret hamizbeach v'lo yeh od ketzef al b'nei Yisrael v'ani hine lakachti et achechem halviim mitoch b'nei Yisrael lachem matana nitunim l'Adonai lavod et avodat ohel moed v'ata ubanecha itach tishmeru et kunachem l'kol davar hamizbeach u'mibeit laparochet v'avadtem avodat matana aten et kunatchem v'hazar hakarev yumat. V'daber Adonai el Haron v'ani hine natati lecha et mishmeret trumotai lechol kodshei b'nei Yisrael lecha netatim lemascha levanecha lechol kolam zeh yeh lecha mikodesh hakdashim min ha'esh kol karbanam lechol minchatam lechol chatotam lechol hashamam asher yashivu li kodesh kadashim lecha hi hu levanecha bikodesh hakdashim tochlenu kol zachar yochal to kodesh yeh kodesh yeh v'zeh lecha trumat matanam lechol knufat b'nei Yisrael lecha netatim levanecha uvnotecha itcha lechol olam kol tahor beveitecha yochal oto kol chelev yitzhar v'chol chelev terosh v'dagam reshitam asher yitnu l'Adonai lecha netatim Bikurei kol asher b'artzam asher yaviu l'Adonai lecha yiyeh kol tahor bebeitecha yochlenu kol cherem b'Yisrael lecha yiyeh kol peter rechem lechol basar asher yikrivu l'Adonai
ואדם ובבהמה יהיה לך, אך פרה פדו תפדה את בכור האדם ואת בכור הבהמה הטמאה תפדה, ופתויה מבין חודש תפדה, וירכך כסף 5 שקלים, ושקל הקודש 20 גירה הוא. אך בכור שור, או בכור כסף, או בכור עז לא תפדה, קודש הם את דמם תזרוק על המזבח ואת חלבם, תקטיר אישה ריח ניחוח לאדוני, ובשרם יהיה לך ככזה התנופה, וכשוק הימים לך יהיה כל תרומה. הקדשים אשר ירימו בני ישראל, לאדוני נתתי לך ולבניך ובנותיך איתך לחוק עולם, ברית מלך עולם היא לפני אדוני לך ולזרעך איתך. ויאמר אדוני אל אהרון, בארצם לא תנחל וחלק לא יהיה לך, בתוכם אני חלקך ונחלתך בתוך בני ישראל.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. We'd like to thank Jerry Weiss for reading that huge aliyah. And now we call on Ellen Shulman for the 7th aliyah. Ta'amod Chaya B'Chaim B'Shifra Shavi'i. It's right there, I think.
I think that's
Amen. Livnei Levi, Hineno Tati Kol Maaseh Yisrael Nachalom, Chelef Avodatam, Asher Hem Ovdim Es Avodat Ohel Moed, V'lo Yikrevu Od, B'nei Yisrael El Ohel Moed, Lo Seid, Chet Lamut, Yovad HaLevi, Hu, Es Avodat Ohel Moed, Behem, Yisu Avonam Chukat Olam L'Dorotechem. B'tok b'nei Yisrael Lo Yinchalu Nachalam. Ki Kol Maser b'nei Yisrael Asher Yorimu L'Adonai Terumo Notati L'Alaviim L'Nachalo Al Kain Omarti Lahem B'tok b'nei Yisrael Lo Yinchalalu Nachalom. V'daber Noel Moshe Lemo V'Alaviim V'daber V'yamarto Alehem Ki Tipuhu Me'et B'nei Yisrael Et Lo Maser Asher Notati Lahem Me'itam V'Nachalatchem V'harimatchem Mimenu Trumat Adonai Maaseh Min HaMaaseh V'nechshav Lachem Terumatechem Kadago Min HaGorel V'chleimo Min HaYakev Chen Torimu V'amatem Terumat Adonai Mikol Matnosechem Asher Tichu Me'et B'nei Yisrael Vatam Mimenu Et Trumat Adonai le'aron ha'kohen. Mikol matnosechem terumah, et kol ha'terumot Adonai mikol helbo, et mekdasho mimenu, yomarti aleihem biharinechem, et helbo mimenu, v'nechshav d'Leviim kitbuat goren v'chuat yokev, yochaltem moto b'chol makom atem. V'veichem tisochohu lachem, chelef avodatchem ba'ol moed, v'lo tisu alav, chet v'arimchem et chalbo, v'menu et kodshe b'nei Yisrael, lo techalalu v'lo tamutu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan v'toteinu. Baruch atah Adonai noteinu Torah.
Amen.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'yalmad divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechanu v'yomecha v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'hagala uv'izman korib v'yimru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Le'olmei Olmaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach Yitbar V'yitrama V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yitalev V'yitalal Shmei Kudashah B'richu Ve'elam Mikol Berchata V'shihirata Tushbechata v'nechemata dahamihiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen.
I'd like to thank Dr. Kopel Burke for reading the last Aliyah in such a strong and inspiring voice for all of us. We're always happy when he's in the sanctuary, and especially when he's reading Torah. And now, call Jonathan Shore for the Maftir Aliyah. Ya'amod Yaakov Zev ben Batzalel Gedalia Maftir. And Brett Cohen will be reading.
Baruch Adonai Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noteinu Torah.
Amen. V'amarta alehem v'hamrimchem et chelbo mimenu v'nechshav leviim kitfuad goren v'chitfuad Yaakov v'achaltem oto b'chol makom atem uveitechem ki sacharchu lachem chelef avodatchem bayochel moed v'lo tisu alav chet v'hamrichem et helvo mimenu v'et kodshei v'nei Yisrael lo techalalu v'lo tamutu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam natan v'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noteinu Torah.
Amen. Yasher Koach to Brett Cohen, who just read the Maftir Aliyah, We now call Craig Rothman to lift the Torah and David Gelban to tie the Torah. Ya'amod Chaim bin Gedalia Hamagbiad. Ya'amod David bin Malcha v'Mendel Halevi Hagolel. B'nei Yisrael, Al-Pi Adonai, B'yad Moshe.
Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udvar Adonai miYerushalayim. 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 Oh yeah, it's on. So as the Sefer Torah is placed on the holder, we're going to use this opportunity to pray for all those in our community who need healing. We pray for healing of body where possible, and certainly healing of soul and mind for all in need of our prayers. In between the two stanzas, we'll pause so that we each have an opportunity to reflect on those we're thinking of and praying for this morning. Mi shebeirach avotenu mekor haberacha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
Mishebeirach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Refuah shalema to all. You may be seated. We're going to turn to this morning's Haftorah, which will be chanted by Jonathan Shore. The Haftorah introduces for us the prophet and king-like, monarch-like figure Samuel, Shmuel. Back when there were prophets, it was unheard of that the Israelites, that the Israelite people would ever want a monarch, a king. Kings were for the other nations, and of course, we as Israelites had our one true king, God. And so we had prophets. And yet, as we all know, when looking at Jewish history, we do have a period that is a period of monarchs, a monarchy period, where we go from prophets to kings. And Samuel, Shmuel, kind of bridges those two periods. So we see this transitional period where the people of Israel, in a way, rebel by insisting or demanding that we have a monarchy system, similar to the way there was rebellion found in this morning's parasha. So that might be the thematic link between the parsha and the Haftorah. There's a great introduction with a little bit more info on page 876 that you can read at your leisure. And Jonathan's going to begin with the brachot and the haftorah on page 877 from the book of 1 Samuel.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'ni'im tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hanemarim b'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo b'Yisrael amo v'nvi'ei haemet b'tzedek. Vayomer Shmuel el ha'am lechu v'nelcha ha'gilgal v'nuchadei sham hamlucha vayelchu kol ha'am ha'gilgal vayamlichu sham et Shaul lifnei Adonai ba'gilgal vayizbechu sham Zivachim shilamim lifnei Adonai, vayismach sham Shaul, v'chol anshe Yisrael ad me'od. Vayomer Shmuel el kol Yisrael, hine shamati bekolchem, l'chol asher amartem li, v'amlich alechem melech. V'ata hine hamelach mitalech lefnechem v'ani zakanti v'savti uvanai hinamitchem v'ani hitalachti lefnechem minu urai ad hayom hazeh hineni anu bi neged Adonai v'neged Mishicho et shor mi lakachti v'chamor mi lakachti v'ed mi ashakti v'ed mi ratzoti u'miad mi lakachti chofer v'ali meinai bo v'ashiv lachem v'yomru lo ashaktanu v'lo ratzotanu v'lakachta miad ish me'uma v'yomer aleihem eid Adonai bachem v'eid mishicho hayom hazeh ki lo matzatem v'yadi me'uma v'yomer eid v'yomer Shmuel el ha'am Adonai Asher asa et Moshe v'et Aharon v'asher hela et avotechem me'eretz Mitzrayim v'ata hityatzvu v'ashafta itchem lifnei Adonai et kol tzidkot Adonai asher asa itchem v'et avotechem Asher ba Yaakov Mitzrayim vayzaku avotechem el Adonai vayishlach Adonai et Moshe v'et Aharon vayotziu et avotechem mi Mitzrayim vayashivum b'makom hazeh vayishkachu et Adonai Elohechem Vayimkar otam biyad Sisra sar tzeva chatzor ubiyad plishtim ubiyad melech Moav vayilachamu bam vayizaku el Adonai vayomru chatanu ki azavnu et Adonai v'navod et aba'alim V'eta ashtarot, v'ata hatzilenu, v'yad oivenu v'nevadecha. V'yishlach Adonai et Yerubal, v'et Bedan, v'et Yiftach, v'et Shmuel, v'yatzel etchem, miyad oivechem, misaviv, v'teshvu betach. Vatiru ki nachash melech b'nei Amon ba'alechem v'tomru li lo ki melech imloch aleinu v'Adonai Elohechem malkechem v'ata Hine hamelech asher bachartem asher shoaltem v'hine natan Adonai alechem melech im tiru and Adonai v'avadetem oto v'shmatem b'kolo v'lo tamru et pi Adonai V'haita gamitem gam hamelech asher malach alechem achar Adonai Elohechem im lo tishmeu b'kol Adonai umeritem et pi Adonai v'haita yad Adonai b'chem b'avotechem gam ata hityatzvu u're'u et hadavar hagadol hazeh asher Adonai oseh le'einechem halo ketzir chitim hayom v'ekra el Adonai v'yitein kolo tumatar u'de'u u're'u kiratchem rabah asher asitem b'nei Adonai L'sholachem melech. Vayikra Shmuel el Adonai, vayitein Adonai kolo tumatar bayom hahu, vayira kol ha'meod et Adonai ve'et Shmuel. Vayomru kol ha'am el Shmuel, itpalel be'ad avadecha, El Adonai Elohecha ve'el namut, ki asafnu al kol chatotenu ra'ah, v'sholanu melech. Vayomer Shmuel el ha'am al tira'u, atem asitem et kol ra'ah hazot, ach al tasuru me'acharei Adonai, v'avadetem et Adonai b'chol levavchem. V'lo tasuru ki acharei hatohu asher lo yolilu v'lo yatzilu ki tohu hema ki lo yitosh Adonai et amo bavur shemo hagadol ki ho'il Adonai lasot etchem lo le'am. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol ha'amim, tzadik b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer v'yoseh, medaber mekayim, she'kol dvarav emet b'tzedek. Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu, v'ne'emanim divarecha, v'davarecha midvarecha, achor lo yashuv rekam, ki ha'melech ne'eman v'rachaman atah, baruch atah Adonai. Ha'el ne'eman b'chol dvarav. Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu, v'la luvat nefesh toshia b'mheira b'yameinu, baruch atah Adonai. B'samech Tzion b'vaneha. Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha, malchut beit David mishichecha, b'mheira yavo v'yagel libeinu, al kiso lo yeshev zar, v'lo yinchalu od acherim et kvodo, ki b'shem kadshecha nishbata lo shelo yichpeh neiro le'olam va'ed, baruch atah Adonai, Magen David. Ala Torah, v'ala Vodah, v'ala Nevi'im, v'al Yom HaShabbat hazeh, shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, l'kedusha l'menucha, l'chavod u'l'tifaret. Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach, u'mbarchim otach, yitbarach shemcha b'fi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh HaShabbat. I just wanted to say that was also my bar mitzvah parsha. So, David, kol hakavod. Shabbat Shalom. My name is Henry Bloom, and I'm an officer of the congregation and a former past president of Men's Club. And it is my privilege this morning to introduce our guest speaker. However, before I do that, I want to say a few words about an important conversation that has started to gain momentum at CBI, and that I hope will lead to action and positive change for our community. This conversation is about the existential threat to the environment posed by the climate crisis, and how we at CBI can become more actively engaged in doing our part to address it. Earlier this year, a group of congregants took the initiative to advance that conversation toward action by forming the CBI Alliance for Sustainability. The first action we took was to connect with Chazon, the largest faith-based environmental organization in the United States. Specifically, we recommended to the CBI board and received unanimous approval to join the Chazon Seal of Sustainability Initiative, a 12-month program designed to support Jewish organizations and communities like CBI that are working to create a healthier, more equitable, and more sustainable world. Chazon helps Jewish organizations do this by linking Jewish values and Jewish teachings to substantive action in pursuit of environmental sustainability. Chazon provides a wide range of resources and direct support from experts that will help us identify and execute projects for our community, and we have already begun to tap into those resources. And CBI is certainly no stranger to Chazon. Sizable contingents from CBI have participated in the Chazon Labor Day weekend bike ride and Shabbaton in the Berkshires and have been consistently inspired by these events. Additionally, 17 CBI Desert Dogs participated in the 2016 Israel ride that is run by Chazon and supports the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies. And I'm told that some of the Desert Dogs are hoping to reprise their participation in the Israel ride in 2022. The CBI Alliance for Sustainability has already identified some initial priorities for our community. We'll be exploring opportunities to reduce the amount of waste we produce in the building, to introduce composting, and to upgrading our recycling efforts. Stay tuned. Our initial conversations have generated a long list of ideas. One specific project we've prioritized is to purchase and install a bicycle rack to enable CBI members to bike to shul instead of driving. Rabbi Eisenberg, Cantor Wallach, and Rabbi Julie are all active participants in this conversation. I encourage all of you to get on board. We aim to involve every constituency within the CBI community, from preschoolers to seniors. There is room for many voices in this critical conversation. We are eager to hear your ideas. Please contact me and become part of the new CBI Alliance for Sustainability. Let us work together to leave this world a better place than we found it. Our guest speaker today is one of the preeminent leaders at the forefront of the movement for environmental sustainability. Nigel Savage is the founder and CEO of Chazon, now the largest environmental organization in the American Jewish community. And believe it or not, this is a second career. Before Chazon, Nigel had a successful career in finance. He has twice been named a member of the Forward 50, the annual list of the 50 most influential Jewish people in the United States. Among his many academic accomplishments and distinctions, JTS awarded him an honorary degree in recognition of his work at Chazon. He is a master teacher and a much sought-after speaker, and we are fortunate to have him with us today. And if that's not enough, Nigel is thought to be the first English Jew to ride across South Dakota on a recombinant bike. I am honored to introduce Nigel Savage.
You're just going to take yourself so you can actually see me. Shabbat Shalom. Henry, thank you for that. If my mother were watching, she would say, just sit down now. Really, really, really thank you. As you said, we were figuring out that I had been at this shul a long, long time ago, in the very, very early days of Chazon. And this shul for Chazon is kind of like the Saul Steinberg cartoon of, New York and then the rest of America. This is a really, really big shul. I'm not sure if the Jersey Shores, for example, are watching online, but Laurie and Josh and their girls were involved in Chazon from very, very early on. I really want to thank Dan Richter and David Tuga and everybody here who's wearing a Chazon ride jersey, and everybody here who's ever supported anybody in one of those rides. And Henry, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, and especially Brett Cohen. And I want to say that Brett and Heidi and their family in 3 generations have been incredibly significant supporters of Chazon, and I'm really so honored to be with you. And I was thinking also how much has changed. I was thinking just now that Chazon started with this bike ride across America. We rode from Seattle, Washington to Washington, D.C. to raise environmental awareness in the Jewish community. And we had on that bike ride riders who were Lubavitch, Orthodox, conservative, reform, secular, and anti-religious, straight and gay, married and single, aged 20 to 47, and we were just 11 riders. Right? We sort of tested pluralism to destruction all by ourselves. The organization was very tiny at that point, but since then, as Henry said, we've really grown. And I was realizing this morning that this is the first time that I have stood in front of an audience and physically spoken in 16 months. The last time I was in Seattle, we'd done a big gathering. There were 250 people there. Numbers of rabbis and synagogues. We had 2 out of 7 speakers from the Seattle City Council. And I was looking at my notes, and I began that day by saying, I've been thinking, I said, about the optimist and the pessimist. And the pessimist says, I just don't see how things could possibly get any worse. And the optimist says, oh, I think I can. But of course, the joke was on us, and it wasn't funny, right? Think about saying that in early February. And so that's the context for being here for me right now, and for the work that Chazon is doing, and for the work that Henry talked about really beginning and growing here. As we come out of COVID, the question for all of us is, how is the world different? How is the Jewish community different? And how are we different? So much in this country is good. So much in Jewish tradition is incredibly, incredibly wise. So much of how people have risen to the challenge these last 16 months has been incredibly moving and inspiring. And yet there is no question, I think, that what we have all experienced is a reminder, right, that unknown unknowns can do a lot of damage. And that when we know that there are things coming down the horizon that we can, could, or should be alarmed by, should we not do more about it? I'm going to say more, hopefully, after lunch about Shemitah, the sabbatical year in Jewish life. It's going to start this Rosh Hashanah, September the 6th. And I'm going to argue, and I hope show you after lunch, that Shemitah, which seems obscure, is incredibly exciting. And if anybody who leaves that session isn't excited by Shemitah, I'm going to be disappointed. But I want to note that the Shemitah year, which is a time for stepping back and reflecting, looking back and looking forwards, is this time around particularly significant for us in looking back over these last 7 years and fleshing out a vision for the next 7. Before I say a couple of words about what it is that I think that we can, could, or should be doing, I want to say, first of all, I want to say, as a Jewish environmentalist, I'm absolutely not here to bang you over the head. I'm not here to tell you what to do or not do. It would be incredibly arrogant. I don't have any standing to do that. I'm still trying to figure things out for myself. And it would be very pedagogically ineffective. But what I do want to do is I just want to think for a second about why it is that we don't do more about the climate crisis and environmental sustainability? And I think there are two reasons, really genuine reasons. The first one is we like to have bad guys, and we like not to be the bad guys. And in relationship to the environmental crisis, there are no obvious bad guys. So in relationship to Soviet Jews, we could say that is an evil empire, right? In relationship to Entebbe, we should say let those people go free. In relationship to civil rights. But in relationship to the climate crisis, and we can talk about the oil companies and so on, but we're all customers of the oil companies, right? It's not so much that there are bad guys as that each one of us has grown up in a way that's truly not sustainable. And that's really kind of fuzzy for us. It makes us not comfortable. And I think that's one of the two reasons that we don't do more about this stuff. The second thing is that we can't define success. We want to be able to define success. Let my people go was a pretty clear definition of success. If you think of apartheid in South Africa, people could say, shouldn't there be a free democratic South Africa? Wouldn't it be amazing if Nelson Mandela were president? There's no likelihood in our lifetime, we're going to see a headline in the New York Times, great news, climate change fixed, go back to how you were, right? And so I just want to note that it's worth unpacking these things, because of course the Jewish response to this is to note them, but then to say, we're not required to complete the task, but neither can we desist from it. And it turns out that those lines from Pirkei Avot that many of us grew up with so familiarly that they're essentially a cliche, it turns out it's really profound. It's profound wisdom at the heart of the Jewish tradition. We're not required to complete the task, but neither can we desist from it. I want to note that it connects to this Parsha. The Jewish people in the Parsha are feeling a bit overwhelmed. They're feeling discouraged. They're looking at their future and they don't like it. And we see that in the Parsha, bad things happen. Note that this is a Parsha where we have fake news, right? Datan and Aviram are saying, why can't we go back to Egypt, the land of milk and honey? Right? It's in the Parsha, we just read it. Right? Egypt wasn't the land of milk and honey. Right? They're saying that as a way of winding people up because people are actually upset and they're afraid. And it's really interesting to see the different models of leadership in the Parsha, because Korach is essentially a disingenuous leader. One of the things that was very moving to me this morning about the service is to understand that this shul embodies Moshe's understanding of leadership and not Korach's, right? It's Moshe and Parshat Yitro where his father-in-law, by the way, his non-Jewish father-in-law, says to him, you're going to burn out, right? You have to have tens and hundreds and thousands. You have to have structure. And it's a beautiful thing to come to a shul and to have the sheet and see so many people involved in leading this service in so many different ways, right? Somebody in this shul, including the rabbi, has thought of that and the lay leaders and has created what amounts to a participatory shul, which is exactly how we take people forwards together as a community. And we say each of us has different gifts. Each of us brings different gifts to the temple. And each of us now, as we go forward in this community, has different ways to make a difference. So what do we do if we've noted that there are no bad guys and we feel bad about it? If we have noted that we can't define success, if we've noted that we feel overwhelmed? I want to say that I think that there are two things that are necessary, and this is what the Chazon Seal embodies, the Chazon Seal of Sustainability. I'm here fundamentally to explain what Henry and his team have been doing, and not merely to thank you and them for it, but to explain why we hope that everybody will get involved, really genuinely. We need, I think, two things. We need a big vision and practical next steps. Fundamentally, that's what the Chazon Seal of Sustainability is. For those of you who know what LEED certification is in a building, and there's like platinum LEED and gold LEED and silver LEED and so on, LEED is retrospective. It's a checklist. If you did this and this and this and this and this, great, you're silver LEED and you're done. The Chazon Seal of Sustainability, as Israelis would say, is mamash lahefach, exactly the opposite. Because Jewish life is never about been there, done that, is done. It's always about aspiration and vision. It is about l'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai. There is no there. There is always more for us to do. And so the heart of the Chazon Seal of Sustainability is for a group of people together in the shul. And in due course, not just obvious suspects. People on the board and people who think of themselves as serious environmentalists. But some people who are not yet involved in the shul. Some people who are not yet members. Some of the teenagers. Some of the older folk. Let's bring people together and on the one hand, have a conversation about what is our vision for this shul, this community, the Jewish community, for September of 2029, at the end of the next full 7-year cycle in Jewish life. What do we want this place physically to look like? What power will we use? How will we relate to our neighbors? How will we relate to local elected officials? How will we connect to Israel, right? Which has been in the headlines for having had, as bad and as messy, right? A 4 or 6 week period, as many of us can remember, right? And yet the Israel ride, which we've done since 2003, is a microcosm of this. It's leaning in. It's engaging with Israeli Jews, Israeli Palestinians, Jordanians, people who are coming together and saying, you know what, this and this and this is wrong. We're going to come together and we're going to try and take practical steps to fix it. That's the question that opens up for this shul. Think just about food. Most shuls have a kashrut policy, and I assume that this shul has a kashrut policy. It'll be slightly different in a conservative shul, an Orthodox shul, a Reform temple, a pluralistic JCC. But for 2,000 years we've been saying, is this kosher? Literally, is this fit for me to eat? Well, that's a 21st question that's wider than kashrut narrowly construed, and I say this as somebody who strictly keeps kosher in a traditional sense. But in the 21st century, what would it mean for the shul to spend a year thinking about what would it be like to have a food policy? Not just kashrut narrowly construed, but where does our food come from? How are the workers treated? How are the animals treated? How is the land treated? Do we grow any of our food? Do we compost our food? What do we serve at Kiddush and Simchas? What about Bar and Bat Mitzvah? What about interfaith? What about food and hunger issues in our community? The process of actually asking these questions, really genuinely as questions, by the way, not as rhetorical questions. Do we use soda? Why or why not? Plastic bottles? Why or why not? Do we serve meat? Why or why not? These are Jewish questions. There's a people who for 2,000 years have asked, is it fit for me to eat this? This is what it means to be Jewish in the 21st century, to accept that we feel disempowered, to accept that we feel guilty, to accept that we can't define success, but to say, we can't complete the task, but neither can we desist from it. And so as we come out of COVID, as we slowly take off our masks, as we reconnect, as we hug people, and as we start to think about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur this year, this new 7-year cycle, I want to invite everybody in this shul, firstly, by the way, to go online and to commit to the Brit Chazon. Chazon means vision, and Brit is a covenant. And the Brit Chazon for every one of us is simply to say, I'm going to do 3 things. Number 1, I'm going to make some further change in my own behavior. I know that in and of itself, it won't be enough to fix the world. But it's the minimum that I can do to look myself in the mirror and to look our kids and our grandkids and the next generation in the eye. Number 2, I'm going to give time and money to organizations that are trying to do this work, that are trying to make a difference in the world. And number 3, I'm going to speak up in wider space, which, by the way, could mean politically, but it could mean in a place of work, in a college, in a school. One by one, we want every institution in the Jewish community to join the Chazon Seal of Sustainability and to start a multi-year process to change. I want to end with one last thing about the calendar, which I was thinking about. COP26, the climate conference, is coming up in Glasgow this winter. And about 10 years ago, I was leading a sort of worldwide Jewish delegation to a sort of high-end interfaith thing before the Copenhagen climate talks. And I had to say something on behalf of the Jewish people, right? I'm not a rabbi, I'm not a PhD, I'm not a scientist. And I was really thinking about this, and what was I going to say? And I found myself talking about the 3 weeks, the period from Shabbat Tammuz to Tisha B'Av, which is actually sort of the next thing in the calendar. And I found myself talking about pessimism and hope. The 3 weeks is the period in Jewish tradition that we confront destruction, and we remember destruction in our history. And Tisha B'Av at the end of it is the culmination of that. We face the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, all these bad things that were said to have happened on Tisha B'Av. And I want to note that in relationship to what's happening in the world right now, there's one group of people who just turn the page, who just literally can't face it, don't want to face destruction, don't want to look at it, are depressed by it. And there's another group of people who are obsessed by it. Oh my God, we are doomed. This is happening, and that's happening, and this is happening. And Tisha B'Av is incredibly fascinating, and the 3 weeks as a whole, because it's this period when in Jewish life, on the one hand, we face destruction, and particularly on Tisha B'Av, we remember it, we choose to look at it. And on the day of Tisha B'Av, we mimic our own deaths. It comes back to the Parsha, because it's knowing that a generation died in the wilderness and didn't have the chance to enter the land of Israel. And the Midrash is that on the eve of Tisha B'Av, I mean, think how intense this is, right? Everybody dug a grave, and they all laid down in their own grave. And the next morning, 39/40ths of the people woke up, and 1/40th didn't. And that happened for 40 years, and that was how the generation of slavery died out in the wilderness. So on Tisha B'Av, we look at our mortality, right? We don't eat, we don't wear leather, we don't anoint ourselves, we don't have sex, we don't drink, right? But then, and we don't lay tefillin in the morning, but then the next day we come back to life. And in the afternoon we lay tefillin, and we greet people. And there's a midrash that Mashiach will be born on the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, and 6 days later it's Tu B'Av, the festival of love. And it's the place where I think in Jewish tradition we believe in hope. It's the late Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory, who was the Orthodox chief rabbi in England, who said, optimism is the expectation that things will be better. Hope is a vision of the future and the desire that it be so. And I began by talking about optimism and pessimism. And if you ask me if I'm optimistic, I'm not sure that I am. But if you ask me if I'm hopeful, I absolutely am. Hope is a Jewish value, and hope is a Jewish virtue. So I want to thank everybody in this community for everything that you have already done. And I want to bless you and me and all of us as we come out of COVID, as we move through the calendar, as we go through the 3 weeks and into the new year, and in due course into a new 7-year cycle in Jewish life. I want to bless you and me and all of us that we retain a sense of hope, that we take steps forward, that we create a better Jewish community, and in due course a healthier, a more sustainable, and a more equitable world for everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
We continue in our Sidurim with the service, page 148, with the prayer for our country. If you're able to, please rise. It will be led by Ari Dibner, in English, the bottom of page 148.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony, to banish hatred and bigotry, and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land, under your providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all peoples in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet, Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen.
We're just checking to see if Art Fredman is on Zoom. And if that worked out, he'll lead the prayer for Israel. And if Art Fredman is not on Zoom or can't sign in, not on. Okay, so Dan Richter is going to lead us in the prayer for the state of Israel, the top of page 149.
Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzor Yisrael, Goalo, Arechem, Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Smicha, Geulatenu, Aleha, Sedach, Ukros, Alecha, Sukkot, Shlomecha, Shlach orcha ve'amitcha l'orsecha, zoreha v'yotzeha, taknem be'etza tova m'lefanecha, hazek et yodei mignei aretz kachenu, v'anchilem Eloheinu Yeshua, ve'atera nitzachon tiatrem, natata shalom ba'aretz, simcha olam le'oshveha, v'nomar amen.
Yashar Koach, Dan. And now we will turn to Zoom, and we welcome Gary Dubrow, who will lead for us the prayer for peace in English, the middle of page 149. Welcome, Gary.
Gary, you're muted.
Not sure if Gary is unmuted. In the sanctuary, we're not hearing Gary, so let's try again. We welcome Gary Dubrow to lead us in the prayer for peace, middle of page 149.
Sorry about that. May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world. Then nation will not threaten nation, and mankind will not again know war. For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. We have come into being to praise, to labor, and to love. Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion. Fulfill the promise conveyed in Scripture, I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you. I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it shall be not ravaged by war. Let love and justice flow like a mighty stream. Let peace fill the earth as waters fill the sea. And let us say, Amen.
Amen. Yashar Koach, Gary, thank you. Shabbat Shalom. We continue now with the end of the Torah service, and we invite Mike Slifer, who will carry the Torah, and David Kanarik to come up to open the Ark, and Kaplowitz will finish the Torah service. We're on page 1. Oh, no, wait, we've got to do Ashrei first. Yeah, okay, hold on a second. Let's do Ashrei first before we... Okay, are they here? Unless they're on Zoom, are the Dovdavanis or Reich family on Zoom?
We're going to take volunteers from the bullpen. Judah, come on up.
Okay. Judah Marcus will lead us in Ashrei, page 151.
Ashrei Ashrei V'Tachal Yalu Chasela. Tila David Armim Kal HaMelech Vavarcha Shimcha Leolam Va'ed Oyom Gadol Adonai Hulal Me'od V'li Glato Ein Cheker Hadar Kibod Hodecha V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha Zecher Avtuvcha Yabiu V'tzikatcha Yiranenu Tov Adonai Lakol Rachamav Al Kol Ma'asav Adonai Kol Ma'asav Kevod Malchutcha Yomeru Uguratcha Yidaberu Malchutcha Malchut Kol Olamim Umemshaltecha B'chol Dor V'ador Einei Chol Lecha Yisaberu V'atanotin Lahem Et Ochlam B'ito Teach Et Yadecha Maskil B'chol Beretz Tzadik Adonai B'chol Drachav V'chasid B'chol Ma'asav Ritzon Yerav Yaseh V'yet Shvatam Yishma V'yoshiem Tila Adonai Daber Pi V'varech Kol Basar Shem Go Chol Olam Va'ed V'anachnu Nevarech Ya Me'atav Yadollah Hallelujah.
Yashar Koach. Our USY Rel Ed chairperson steps up to take on this for Men's Kov Shabbat. Yashar Koach, Judah. Now we continue with the conclusion of the Torah service, page 153, and I turn it over to Hank.
Hallelujah, et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, odo al eretz, v'shamayim, v'yoharem keheren li'ahamo, tila lecho, chasihidav, livnei Yisrael am kirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Mizmor LeDavid, Havu Ladonai B'nei Elim, Havu Ladonai Kavavos, Havu Ladonai Kivo Shemo, Ishtachavu Ladonai B'hadrat Kodesh, Kol Adonai Al Hamayim, El HaKavod Hirim, Adonai Al Mayim Rabim, Kol Adonai b'hakoach, Kol Adonai b'hadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, v'yeshaber Adonai et arzei halvano, v'yarkidem kimo egel, lebanon v'sir yahon, kimo ven re'emim, Kol Adonai kotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai Yecholel Ayolo, Vayachsav Yarahot, Vecholo Kulo Mer Kavod, Adonai Lamavul,
Yasher Koach to all participants in the Torah service. Please remain standing as we continue with Musaf, and Musaf will be led by David Ehrlich, with also some help and participation from Sam Kanerik. We begin with the Chatzi Kaddish, page 155, and then we'll say the Amidah silently, beginning on page 156.
Yikadav, Yikadav, Shemei Rabbah. Yamadi Rakute, Viamlich Machute, Bechayecham, Uyu Yomecham, Uchayedechol Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Bagala, Uvisman Kari, Vimaru, Amen. Yeshmei Rabbah Mevorach. Leolam leol meomaya. Yitbarach v'shabach v'par v'ramam v'naseh v'hadar v'halev v'halal shmei kedusha brichu leila mikol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechebata damiram v'yoma v'imiru. Amen.
We'll continue with the repetition of the Musaf Amidah beginning on page 156.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei Avoteinu Elokei Avraham Elokei Yitzchak v'Elokei Yaakov Elokei Sarah Elokei Rivka Elokei Rachel Elokei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Anara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot Mavi Goel Livnei V'Nehem L'man Shemo B'Yava Melech Ozer V'Vakei Moshiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Fokei Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei Metim Atah Rav Lo Shia Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Meitim Berachamim Rabbi, Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bagivurot, Umido Melach, Melech Meimitu Mechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayo meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, V'chayei ha-meitim. Naritzecha v'nakdishcha, Kisot Sia, Sarfei Kodesh, Hamakdishim, Shimcha b'Kodesh, Kakatu, Al Yad Nevi Echad, V'kara Zel Zeviyamar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, B'chol Haaretz Kavodo. Kavodo Male Male Olam, Mayim Mikam Kavodo. Kavodo Male Male Olam, Mayim Mikam Kavodo. Misharata Shoalim Shoalim Zelazeh, Aye Mikam Kavodo, Liamatam Baruch Yomeru. Baruch Adonai Mim Komo. Mim Komo Hu Yifein Barachamim V'Yachon Al Yachamim Shemo Erev Avoker B'chol Yom Tamid Pamim B'Yava Shema Omrim. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hu Eloheinu Hu Avinu V'Hu Malkeinu Hu Moshienu V'Hu Yashmienu Yashmienu Berachama Sheni 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 Li'enei Kocha V'Hu Yashmienu Yashmienu Berachama Sheni 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 Li'enei Kocha Li'ot Lachem El Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem V'drei Katu Katuv Le'mor Imlochanar Le'olam L'chai Tzion L'dor V'dor Hallelujah L'dor V'dor L'dor V'dor L'dor V'dor Nagid Gad Lecha L'dor V'dor L'dor V'dor L'dor V'dor Nagid Gad Lecha U'lenetzach Netzachim Kedusha Kadish Kedusha Kadash Kadish V'shishu Haloheinu Libiminu Lo Yamush Le'olam Va'ed L'dor V'dor L'dor V'dor L'dor V'dor Nagid Gad Lecha L'dor V'dor L'dor V'dor L'dor V'dor Nagid Gad Lecha Ki El Melech Gadol 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 Kadosh Le'olam Kata Ki El Melech Gadol Gadol Kadosh v'kajol v'kadosh ata. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
Tikanta Shabbat Ratita Korbanataha Tavita Prushaim Surainasaha Mangahaleolam Kabonin Halu Toma Haim Zahu Vigam Hoavim Devaraha Gadula Baharu Asmin Sinai Nisabu Aleha Vatatavim Adonai Elohim Lehakri Ba Korban Musaf Shabbat Karo Oi Yehi Ratzom Yafaneha Adonai Elohim Avotenu Hamashi Banim Ligulam Shetalenu Bishipab Leartenu Bititainu Vigulenu Shishamasu Vatenu Lifaneha Ek Korbanotehem Temidim Kesiram Umusahim Kehil Hatam Ve'ed Musaf Yom HaShabbat Hazeh Asuvahi Krivu Lifaneha Ba'ahava Kimitrat Vetona Kakato Betorateha Al Yedei Moshe Abdeha Mipi Yedei Moshe Abdeha Mipi Havadeha Ka'amor Uvyom HaShabbat Shnei Havasim B'nei Shana Tamimim Ushnei Esrumim Soled Minha Belula Bashman V'Enizko Olat Shabbat B'Shabbato Al Olat Ha-Tamid V'Enizka
Yismechu b'malachutecha Shomrei, 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 Shabbat Bekore, Yoneg Shabbat, Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat Bekore, Yoneg Shabbat, Mikadeshei, Mikadeshei Shavi, Shabbat, Kulam Yisbe'u V'tijudatu V'hashabat Yismechu B'malachutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei Yoneg Shabbat Yismechu B'malachutecha Shomrei, 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 Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat V'hashvi'i Ratzitabo Kidasha Shabbat Chemdat Yamin Oto Karata Shabbat Yismechu B'malachutecha Shomrei, 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 Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu B'malachutecha Shomrei, 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 Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat Zecher L'maseh Breshit Eloheinu V'Elohei Avoteinu Ritzei b'menuchatenu, kachenu b'mitzvotecha, v'tein chelkenu b'toratecha, sabenu mituvecha, v'samchenu b'shuatecha, v'taher libenu, liavdecha b'yemet, V'chanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu B'yahava Ratzon Shabbat Kachecha V'yinuchu V'yisroel Mikadeshei Shemecha Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu B'yamcha Yisrael V'tilatam V'shavei v'tavodah L'vidir Beitecha V'tilatam B'yavad T'kapel Ratzon V'tehila Ratzon Tamid Avodat Yisrael Amecha V'techazenu Aneinu B'shivcha L'tzion Barach Amin Baruch atah Adonai Hamachazer Shinoto L'tzion Modim anachnu la shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'lehei avatenu l'olam va'ed. Zorchanenu magenu sheinu atahu l'dor v'dor. Nodelecha v'saper tilatecha al chayenu misarim b'yadecha v'al nishvotenu v'chenu lach. V'yal nisachecha shebachol yom imanu. V'yal niflotecha v'totecha shebachol eid erev v'voker tzorayim. Hatov kilo kula rachabecha v'chamim kilo tamua chasadecha me'olam kivin la. V'chol hot kulam yidbrach yidrash shem malkeinu tamid le'olam ba'ed. V'chol chayim yodu chasela ve'alu et shimcha b'yamed ha'el shortenu v'etzotenu sela. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha v'na'el hodod. Eloheinu v'Elahei Avotenu, Barucheinu Barucha Moshe B'Torah, V'katuva Yodei Moshe Avdecha, Haruma V'pi Aaron V'anav Kohanim Am Kodeshecha Kamor. Yivarech Adonai V'rish Marecha, Ya'er Adonai Panav Elecha V'yichunecha, Yisa Adonai Panav Elecha V'yitzem L'cha Shalom. Sim shalom tova ra'alam. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'rachamim Yisrael amecha. B'cheinu avinu kulanu k'yechad b'yor Panecha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Ki bior panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torah Chaim V'Rava Chesed U'Staka V'Rachamim V'Chai L'Shalom. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. V'tov b'necha levarech et amecha Yisrael b'chol eitu b'chol shah b'shlomecha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tovam racha. Baruch atah Adonai havarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom.
Kaddish Shalem, page 181.
Yikra Shemei Rabbah. Yamad yivrachu v'tei v'yamich b'achutei b'chayechon v'yechon v'chayechol beit Yisrael v'galayz ma'karei v'yimeru. Amen. Yeshvei Rabbam b'vorach li'olam li'olmei omaya. Yidbrach v'shabach v'yidbar v'duram v'naseh v'dadar v'dalev v'dalal shmei kedusha b'richu le'elam mikol b'chata v'shirata v'chata v'dechamata Damiram b'yama v'imeru. Amen. Tika bel sotam v'dahon d'chol Yisrael kadaba v'hon d'ishmaya v'imeru. Amen. Yesh lama rabba mishmaya v'chayim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'brama v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen.
Yashar Koach to David Ehrlich and to Sam Kanner for leading us in Musaf. We continue with Ein Kelohenu, page 182, and this will be led by Jason Whittinger. You can be seated.
Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkenu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mich Eloheinu, Mich Adonenu, Mich Emalkeinu, Mich Moshienu. Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodeh l'malkeinu, Nodeh l'moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shetiru, Bavahotenu, Lefanecha Ketoret
Hasamim. Yashar Koach to Jason. And as we rise for Aleinu, we welcome Mark Richmond to lead us in Aleinu. Page 183.
Oleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'seis kedula l'yosef reshi, shelo asonu k'nei v'lo shamanu k'zor, shelo shamanu V'nema v'hadonoi v'melech ha'kol haaretz v'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo
Echad. Yashar Koach, Mark. Be seated, and we continue with the words of Kaddish Yatom as we offer comfort to all those who mourn, and remember with blessing all those whose yortzeips are being observed today or this week. Page 184, Kaddish. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divrach Hirutei, Ve'amlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, Uvyomechon, Uv'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'gala ubizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach leolam umei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha b'riachu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'olma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Shabbat shalom. I'm about to turn it over to Dan Richter for announcements. But one thing I just wanted to welcome everybody, and there probably are people who are here back for the first time in our sanctuary in a very long time, probably a year and a half or so. So it's become our custom, our minhag, that each Shabbat, those who are back for the first time since the pandemic began, that we say, and you can wave, yes, we welcome you, and we say the words of Shehechianu together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. And may we all continue to be able to gather safely to daven and to everything else that we always enjoy doing together in safety and in good health. And Shabbat Shalom to our friends on Zoom. We look forward to seeing you soon.
I think we're going to announce a bike ride for 2022. So I think seated among us are people wearing these wonderful Desert Dog biking shirts. If you can come up for a minute, and we'll stand right here in mass. And these are participants of the Israel ride from prior years. Is anybody other than 2016? 2016, right? So these are the Desert Dog shirts from 2016. I think we're going to reprise the shirts for our next ride. And our next ride, Brett, do you want to talk about that for a second?
Sure. The next time we're going to Israel as a bike contingent will be 2022, November. Tentatively, the ride's scheduled for November 1st to the 5th of 2022. So please join us. It's going to be great. We had an incredible experience in 2016, and we hope to do it again. So if you have any questions you want to talk about, there's actually all sorts of options as far as ride levels. You can ride as intense as 75 miles a day to as easy as, say, 30 miles a day. And there's even a Habarim contingent that goes along, follows the cyclists and sort of tours in the Negev. So it's an amazing, amazing experience, and you get to see the school in the desert that we support as part of the ride, called the Arba Institute for Environmental Education, which is just an amazing, and Nigel was referring to it before, just an incredible place, and very inspiring, especially in these times. So please join us. It's even though it may seem like a lot of cycling, and seem like it's intense, they make it really easy for you. So come join us.
First of all, I just want to also thank Boaz Kimmelman, who designed these wonderful shirts, and they were certainly the hit of the ride. Everybody could find us, and they were loving our shirts. Along with what Nigel said, one of the stops on the ride is Kibbutz Keturah, and what's amazing about the Kibbutz Keturah is you get to meet actually Palestinians, Jordanians, Israeli Arabs, and you get to meet and talk with them. And for most of us, we've never got to do that, to meet native Palestinians, Jordanians, Israeli Arabs, and it's wonderful to actually talk to them and get to know them as human beings one-on-one. It's really quite an emotional experience and had a large effect on all of us, I think. And so it's really one of the highlights of the ride. But there is one lie in Israel, especially on this ride. The biggest lie in Israel is that's the last hill of the day. Because there's always another hill. And the last part of this ride, after riding 350 miles from Jerusalem to Eilat, is they say, don't worry, the last 2 miles is easy. It's all downhill from the hills into Eilat. No hills, no nothing. It's 2 miles downhill at high speed. In that hill, there's a hill up. So it is definitely the biggest lie. But everybody here will tell you it was an amazing experience, and I highly recommend, and they're all different levels. And when you're there, you can go from day to day, switch your levels. So if you want to do 90 one day, 25 the next, that's also, it's really, and the lamb is great all through the ride.
Thank you. So we do have one congregant already signed up. Simon, my son Simon is signed up for 2022. So I'm just wondering if anybody out here might be interested in signing up for 2022 with us. We're going to try to get a bigger team. We had 17 in the year 2016. We want to go bigger and get as many people from CBI as possible. So if you're interested, I'll put you on the list. And you can get a free pair of socks or a hat. So right now I can give you, if you think you might be interested, you get on my list. And the only way to get off the list is to either make a donation to our Desert Dogs. If you do $50, everybody gets a pair of socks or a hat. So
for a donation. If you want to think about it, that you want to maybe join us in 2022, the date is November 1st through the 8th of 2022. The cost is, well, it comes to about $5,200. It's $4,200 fundraising, and that's what we do here, is to help you with the fundraising. And it's a $1,000 cost. You can get it maybe down to about $500 if you sign up early, and you have to pay for your airplane ticket. And if you want a bike, I think it's about another $100. Does that sound right? Bring your bike. Okay. So there's some kind of cost with bikes that you'll work out. LL will give it to you for free. November 2022. Who could be thinking about going on the Israel ride for an Israel ride hat? Who would be thinking about that? Brett. 2022. Anybody else thinking about 2022? Hat or socks? Ari, hat or socks? Socks. And the other reason why we have these socks is so we can see these back up to you. I'm going to write it down. Anybody else thinking about Israel ride 2022? Yeah. Socks, hat. All right. So this is, in consonance with our theme of Judaism and the environment for this Men's Club Shabbat. And Nigel will enlighten us afterwards. We're going to go out for a little kiddush outside. A little bit of rain, but, we'll be okay. There's a vegan table for vegan food because we want to have some earth-friendly food. It's on a table by itself. It has some soups and salads, but you'll see that vegan table. There's lots of bagels, all kinds of good stuff. And thank you for everybody who helped set that up and shop for it and to help put together the men's club and work on the skit and read Torah, the schleppers. There's more good stuff coming up for the men's club. We're already kind of thinking of our Men's Club Shabbat for next year. But if you want to get involved with Men's Club, definitely reach out to our new presidents, David Tauger and Craig Rothman, and we're always looking for more people. For CBI stuff coming up, I think there's Mahjong and Canasta coming up. And remind me of the date. Does anyone know? Canasta and Mahjong. Check your calendar. Wednesday, Thursday, I think. Well, check your calendar. Big event coming up is with the Inclusion Committee. We're showing a movie, Milwaukee, and I'm forgetting the 5-digit zip code, but it's a zip code in Milwaukee that had the highest incarceration of African Americans in the country, and some people who lived in that community are speaking in the documentary. If you want to see the documentary, you have to RSVP on the announcements, the CBI announcements. Just click on the link and you just put your name in and your email, and then we'll send you the link. The link is only good until June 27. And on June 27, we'll sit out here. We'll also be on Zoom, where one of the subjects of the documentary, Chad, blank on his name, but he is in the movie, the subject of the movie. He'll join us on the Zoom, talk about the movie, his experiences as well. So just sign up so you can see it, see the documentary, so we can all talk about it together on June 27th. It had a deadline of Sunday. Forget about it. If you can't get to me by Sunday, or sign up on that list anytime before the 27th, but you will not be able to see the documentary after the 27th. So we only get it because of this licensing until the 27th. So that's Milwaukee, the Milwaukee documentary. I know, Jonathan, you have an announcement. Anything else? Jonathan.
So for those who don't know me, I'm Jonathan Shore. I'm the outgoing president. And I just wanted to say, last night we had our installation, and it really was a wonderful night, and there was a lot going on, a lot of things to do, and I didn't get a chance to get up there and say thank you, because thank you to everyone who was on the Men's Club board, because you all were amazing over the past 3 years, and really appreciate everyone who chipped in, helped out, and attended all those meetings. They were absolutely a lot of fun. It was probably the highlight of being Men's Club president, is being able to run the meeting, because be able to keep the meetings to more of a social event just as much as a work event. So thank you to everyone who's on the board, and thank you to Alex, my co-president, because without you, I don't think we could have done this if we did it by ourselves, because it's a lot of work and a lot of stuff goes into this, and you were a huge help, and it was great working with you, and we had a lot of fun phone calls to discuss Men's Club issues along the way. And I hope we can continue having those kind of phone calls and keep chatting, and it is fun to talk. I wanted to thank everyone for today, and I wanted to mention a quick thing, is that we put this on the calendar about 6 or 8 months ago, and we had no idea whether this would actually happen because of the way things were. We knew that we'd be able to have at least some group of people, and we were, very conscious of the fact that what was going on in the world, and we really, really wanted this to happen. And it's amazing to see so many people actually came. Last night we had over 120 people at dinner last night. I counted before we left, staying till the end for Mariv last night. There were 50 people in the room for Mariv, which is an amazing sight. And today I can see there were probably about 70 or 75 people here today. So really very excited to see CBI come back to the building, and there's really a willingness and a love for CBI, and it's amazing to see. So I hope we can continue that. Yes, we hope. Remember, the summer is coming, and fewer people come to shul in the summer, so please make it an effort. We want to have Torah reading in person, so once again, a little advertisement. If you read Torah and are willing to come, please let Cantor Wallach know we need Torah readers. So that's a little advertisement for you, Cantor Wallach. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to everyone who put this weekend together, because there's a lot of work and a lot of things go into this, and I know that some thank yous went out. But I personally want to thank everyone, Rabbi Eisenberg and Cantor Wallach, of course, for helping us with getting the service together. Harvey and the staff at CBI in the office, we really appreciate everything that you've done for us. With the ushers from Sisterhood, the people who shopped, Hank and Howard, thank you. I know you are like doing it. We really appreciate it. Henry for doing the last-minute installation. We appreciate it, and it was really you really stepped up in a big way. Everyone who was in the skit, thank you. And Andy for the where's Andy? Andy's here somewhere. For the program. Oh, there you are. For the program, I appreciate doing it. And lastly, the most important thing is thank you to Dan Richter, because I don't know if you all know how much Dan works on this, starting about a year in advance. He's already planning the skit for next year. So understand that he starts writing in the beginning, and he's been working on Men's Club Shabbat for a good 6 months, and he is tireless, and he puts in an enormous amount of effort. And it's important that we all say thank you. So thank you, Dan. We really appreciate it. So now we can finish with the rest of the announcements.
Thank you, Jonathan and Shakach, and thank you, Jonathan and Alex, and the entire board on behalf of our community, our congregation, for all the work that you did over these past few years, and that Men's Club does for our entire congregation. We all appreciate. We're going to conclude in a moment with Adon Olam, page 187, but I'll just point out that before we head outside to enjoy our Kiddush luncheon, we're going to actually hear Kiddush and do Motzi inside at the back of the sanctuary, and we're going to have Alan Sloan will lead us in the Kiddush, and Michael Weinstein will lead us in Motzi. But first, we'll conclude with Adon Olam, page 187.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Teren Kol Yitzir Nivra V'Yev Nasa B'Hefsako Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'Yacharei Kichlot HaKol V'Bado Imlov Nora V'Hu Haya V'Hu Oved V'Hu Yeh B'Tifara V'Hu Yeh B'Tifara V'Hu Echad V'Yein Sheni Barki Ruchi V'Yetishan V'Yayira V'Im Ruchi Yeviati Adonai Li V'Lo Ira Adonai Li V'Lo Ira.
Please rise as we face the back of the congregation as Alan Sloan leads us in Kiddush. Amen. And we welcome Michael Weinstein for Motzi. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
I just want to say I forgot to thank David Tauger for cooking. So David,
Star Chef, David Tauger.
David, thank you. You got the, one more thing, when you go outside, try and find a seat. Don't congregate at the food. We'll call people up, small groups at a time, to come get food. So please go sit down outside and enjoy the Kiddush.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Good to see you.
Shabbat Shalom, whoever's on Zoom and live stream.
Shabbat Shalom.
Glad you're with us. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Cantor.
Do I have a partner for L'chaim? Anybody want to join me? Ah, good. Oh,
there you go.
A virtual. Oh, okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro.